Hey everyone, John Henry here, SlingshotFutures.com, and welcome to the daily futures and crypto market outlook for tomorrow's trading. That's going to be for the 12th of the month, going on Thursday. Today was a little bit of an interesting one. We had a really slow start to the day. It was absolutely abysmal across the board, and that could be due to the fact that, well, we had the FOMC meeting minutes, coming out at 1400 a couple hours ago. Now, after that happened, we do see a little bit of movement, of course, but before we start jumping into the charts, as always, make sure to swing it over to slingshotfutures.com, scroll down, and click on the Join the Daily Outlook newsletter. That's going to let you sign your email up with us on our email list so you'll be notified every time one of these videos comes out. Along with that, in the newsletter itself, we talk about all kinds of different stuff. So not only do you get the video, but we also take a look at some stocks and a few other things to keep your eyes on that are moving well. So make sure to grab that newsletter if you're not already on that list. Of course, along with that, if you haven't done so already, make sure to click on the live Trader subscription and trial info. From there, you can sign up for a 3-day trial in the room. It is absolutely free. There is no charge for it. You just hang out with us for a couple days in the live trade room, see what we're all about, and kind of get a feel for how everything works. You can see our screens. You can see what we're doing the entire time. It's a really good way to get a feel for how everything works. So make sure to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. Now, taking a look at the overall movement that we have going on right now, the euro is still grinding its way up. Beautiful bull channeling working its way higher. We had a level of resistance, kind of these swing lows into swing high area that could have been a potential area of interest. And initially, they did find some selling pressure off of there, maybe a 0.5% drop, and then we pushed back up and started breaking higher. That's a good thing to note because the next thing that we have is, if we zoom out a little bit further, we have another massive level of support or resistance coming through here at 19,180. Not too far away from that, and the market is likely going to see that as an objective to the upside. So what I'm looking for in the short term is just a pullback, right? We have a breakout above this area, a pullback, use it as support, and then finish the job off at 19,180. And from that 19,180, then we can start looking for potential downside movement. The euro is really bullish right now, so I don't want to be the first one to the party off at 19,180. You could probably find some scalps off there, but I think it's going to be important to play it a little bit safe, let the sellers prove to you that they want to start taking over there at an area of resistance rather than jumping the gun and dropping orders because, well, like we had at this area of resistance, it might work for a little bit and then it ends up breaking back to the other direction. So we have to be a little bit prepared for that because this is a fairly sustained bull trend and it's a pretty healthy one. We're getting nice pullbacks inside there. Everything is looking really good. We're cycling from lows to highs of the channel. That's not something that you necessarily want to try going against. Now, for me, looking at these big areas of resistance, there will definitely be sellers that are building into positions here, the first come, first serve kind of thing. But when I look at this and I see an area of this sort of magnitude and I'm expecting it to hold, if I'm expecting it to hold, doesn't mean that I'm going to drop orders there right off the bat. I want to see them hold it, prove it to me, start breaking down, and then maybe come back. It doesn't have to go all the way back, but at least something, and then look to sell off of that retest. That gives us the extra proof that we're looking for. For right now, though, we do have that big area of resistance above us, and that will be an objective at 19,180. Going over to gold, gold for the most part is starting to catch a pretty nice lift. This major area of resistance here, once again, just like we were talking about in the euro, another big level of resistance, just kind of chopping through current price right now at 93.1. They have initially held it several times. We had a nice hold there. They tried breaking out, failed, held it again, and now they're giving it a shot again to the upside. That gives me a pretty big clue that we're likely going to find a lot of sellers above this high at 96.7. The reason I say that is because, well, if the buyers were so interested in this, why couldn't they break through it here? Why couldn't they break through it there? Why was this breakout why was it unsuccessful? What makes me believe that this breakout's going to be any different? Well, looking backward a little bit here, we do have some previous swing highs, swing lows all coming into play. We can even drag that a little further. And it does create a little bit of a buy zone. So the definite argument is that buyers will probably make a new high. But the counter argument is I don't believe they're going to make much of a new high. I'm looking at this top to be more of a trap, looking for sellers above, maybe a slight offset above it like 98 or so, find some selling pressure from there and shove the market back down, and then we start transitioning into a range. It looks too nice through here to not start thinking about range, especially if all of these breakouts on both sides, the sellers aren't getting anywhere either. So I'm just not anticipating any breakout to really stick around. And that means that if we're going into the highs, look for 2 legs on that upswing and then looking to sell off of that second leg back down and drive the market back towards the lows of the range. Remember, the overall trend is definitely bearish in the short term. You don't necessarily want to go against that. This is just a nice correction in an otherwise sturdy downtrend, and this is exactly what you want to see in a downtrend, a good, healthy correction. So a lot of sellers will be building into this move. Play it safe. And again, we don't necessarily want to be the first one to the party. I would wait for 2 legs to the upside on this one, and then looking for some selling pressure to come back in. Over on crude oil is wedging and getting tighter and tighter on that wedge. Now, we did bounce out of the buy zone that we've been talking about for the past couple weeks now, and it's bouncing beautifully. Absolutely gorgeous bounce from really down the lows of 49.20 up to 49.60s, procured a gorgeous rally to the upside. And with that rallying, we're now starting to run into a little bit of a pretty big area of support and resistance. We're chopping between these. Now, if you didn't see the Twitter post that I made earlier today, make sure to follow us on Twitter if you haven't done so already. We make those posts throughout the day, but we were talking about these levels here and just looking at them as more of opportunities to scalp. We're not really in an area that we're going to be able to get big extended moves going, so instead these offer up nice little areas to scalp around, and so far they've worked out really well today. But we're still kind of hovering around them. We haven't broken away from them, and we are forming a little bit of a wedge top. Now, the wedge top by itself, not that big of a deal, but it is pretty obvious that we have some nice levels of support and resistance cutting through here. If you go really far back, you'll find more support and resistance there. But just in the short term, we have a nice double bottom low. They broke down, came back, retested it. We came back, held it initially. This is definitely an area that we want to pay attention to. But then if we look a little further down, we have multiple tops inside there. We have multiple tops inside there, even some bottoms and another bottom. This could easily just get us stuck for a while, and because of that, I think we have to, I just look to scalp crude. I'm not really looking for big moves right now, because the big move area, that's already done and gone, right? That left the station. We've been already talking about that one. The only way that I would consider a longer term move, something that you'd be hanging on to for quite a while, would be a good pullback back down to retest some of these other areas of just kind of structural importance, right? Not only the small level here, but even a little bit further down at around 50, 50 40s, 50 30s down in that zone. That's where we've seen a lot of support and resistance, and that would be the area that I would look to continue that rally to the upside at cheaper prices. But for right now, I think we're in scalp mode, just kind of chopping back and forth between these ranges. The buy side in the short term definitely has the overall ambition, and they are following through. So I would rather look to see movement on the buy side and buying small pullbacks, and mainly just looking to scalp for right now. And then we've got the S&P. The S&P has had that range, just an absolutely beautiful range for a couple days here, and they're starting to break out above the highs. I was looking for a dip down to around 25.38 to 36.25, but it never actually made it. It came close, right? They missed it by just a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 points, and started rallying back to the upside. So obviously buyers are very aggressive on these lows, and they're buying every pullback they can get their hands on. Otherwise, we would have had that really nice pricing down there. Unfortunately, though, it missed us. So I'm looking for a little more continuation here. Now, in terms of continuation, we're already at the highs, so I'm going to have a hard time being a buyer here. But one thing that we can look for is the potential of this becoming a little bit of a wedge. The wedge top looks pretty good. We have a little more room until that completes itself. And if we look at the bottom, we can see another nice wedge forming here. So it gives us a couple options. What I really want to see here is either just a quick pullback to look for some scalping off a 50 quarter, or if we can cycle back down again to the lows, we might be able to find more scalping. Now notice, I'm not saying longer term moves here. I'm looking for scalping because what I want to see for the longer term move is a break underneath this channel, right? Go back down to the lows of the range at around 42.5 or better. I wouldn't mind prices down here. Still waiting for them. But that would be where you'd start looking for that longer term move. You're buying into that dip, looking for continuation to the upside. This is a very extended rally to the upside, and there hasn't really been any pullback. The biggest pullback that they had was back here, and that really wasn't so much a pullback as it just went range bound for a little while. So we're still kind of waiting for that bigger pullback, and until we get that, we tend to just go in a range and continue on our merry way. So looking for that deeper pullback, but until then, looking to definitely be a buyer on any pullback that the market gives us. Now, switching over to the cryptocurrency side of things, you know, we do have a decent amount of stuff going on. Bitcoin obviously doing very well. Oh, and before we forget, before we jump into the crypto side of things, we do have the news for tomorrow. It's not a ton to worry about. We do have the crude oil inventories tomorrow because of Monday being a holiday. So tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning, we have the PPI month over month for September coming out forecasted 0.4%. The previous was 0.2%. At 10:30 tomorrow morning, we have ECB President Draghi on the microphone, and that is definitely going to be something to keep your eyes out. I never like trading when Draghi's on the microphone, or Yellen for that matter. They tend to cause the markets to be a little bit crazy. So 10:30 is going to be a weird one. And then at 11 o'clock, of course, we have the crude oil inventories. That should also be a pretty interesting one. So now we can jump over to the cryptocurrency side of things. So in terms of cryptos, Bitcoin has been catching a nice rally to the upside. If you've been living under a rock, maybe you didn't know that, but we're seeing some monster continuation. So with the overall movement to the upside, we're seeing every reason in the world to want to be a buyer on any dip that they give us. Now, I have marked up the big level of support at 44.7190. I would absolutely love to be able to get 44.7190. Are we going to get it? Probably not anytime soon. You know, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, I would love to see those cheaper prices, but we're not likely going to see that anytime soon. So the next thing that we really have to worry about then is, okay, well, if we're not going to get that bigger pullback, where are we going to see some more support that we can start buying into? We do have the longer term wedge that is very well established coming through here. We can see the highs chopping through price. We just cycled off of the low of that, and we're now creating an expanding megaphone, right? We have a high that's getting higher and a low that's getting lower, and that means that we may be able to pick up a pretty nice pullback. Notice something that stands out here. We have this as a cross and that as a cross. These are two hot spots that we may be able to get to line up, or here if it takes a really long time, that I would love to see some pullback buying action to get into. Now that puts us at around 46.60, 46.50 in that area, and then a little bit higher around 47.80. Both of those zones are going to be big levels of interest for Bitcoin buyers trying to get cheaper prices. Now keep in mind, we may not get it, okay? This was originally looking like a little bit of a breakdown into a flag, but this flag keeps going, and the longer a flag goes on, the weaker it gets in terms of its chances of going back down for another leg. We're running out of time here for the bear flag to break down again, and as long as that stays bullish, we could easily see 5,000 by the end of the week, if not tomorrow, given the way that this market moves lately. So you got to keep that in mind, but if we can get some better prices, I would love to see a dip down to around 46.50s. If it wants to just chop around and go sideways, of course, looking for around that 47.80 as well. Over on Bitcoin Cash is a little bit of a mess. We had the overall bear wedge working its way lower, very prominent bear wedge. They aggressively snapped through the lows, and they broke down into the major buy area support. That tells us a couple things. First of all, we're probably dealing with, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but a lot of traders on BCC, they're not sure what they want to do with the upcoming fork. Bitcoin's getting another fork, and we're going to be adding Bitcoin Gold to the list. What do you do with a forked currency off of a forked currency? I think there's a lot of confusion going on with Bitcoin Cash, and a lot of people may be pulling their assets out to move it over to Bitcoin to get that juicy Bitcoin Gold for free, depending on the exchange that they're using. Now, we haven't had a whole lot of exchanges announce what they're going to be doing yet, but that is likely the plan of a lot of traders and why we're seeing this dip lower. We are still balanced in a major buy area, so the buyers do have a shot at trying to continue this back up. But for the most part, in all honesty, I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, I'm kind of ignoring Bitcoin Cash until we get a little more info on what's going to happen with Bitcoin Gold. So for now, I think it's better just to leave it alone, leave it to its own devices and see what it wants to do, and wait for the Bitcoin Gold to come out, and then we can go from there. Jumping on over to Ethereum. Now, Ethereum, we've been chopping around a lot lately. They put in a little bit of a high here at around 312, 313, and they've been putting in a low at around 287, 288. And we just keep cycling back and forth. We're not breaking out of this area. And as long as we're inside of here, I'm looking to buy low and not even necessarily looking to sell high, maybe some profit, but I think we do have a good shot going into the end of the year for Ethereum to ratchet back up towards those highs. So instead, what I'm looking for is looking to buy as low as possible. Those previous swing lows will be areas. They've already been bought up aggressively every time they've made a new one. So this most recent swing low at around 85 2860 is going to be a big zone of interest. But also, we have the major swing low that if we zoom out a little bit here, we can see that this area hasn't been something that you want to mess with. Every time we've been inside of here, we've got a lot of reaction. Every single time. So if we can get a pullback to this area, I would love to see some buying pressure through there to push the market back up. Until then, we're just kind of in a range. Buy low, sell high, stay out of the middle. And unfortunately for Ethereum, we are smack in the middle right now, and we're not really doing much else. So Ethereum kind of on the back burner right now until we get out of the middle range here and get us some better prices. And then over on Litecoin, we're balanced in the area of support and resistance. Everything is still looking pretty good inside of here. The way that things are working right now, Litecoin has shed a lot of price. Comparative to other markets like Bitcoin, Bitcoin dropped, about 25%. We had Ethereum drop about, not really that much either, but Litecoin shed a ton. All the way from the highs of 100, they dropped all the way down to 30s. So they dropped 70% of the price. Litecoin definitely is the one that took the biggest hit, and we're just kind of finding a little bit of a balance. In the long run, I think Litecoin still has a good future to push back up towards 100, maybe even 150 going into next year. But where we are right now, we're kind of in the middle, and I don't have a whole lot of faith in the short term in the sense that we're not really getting a whole lot of movement. We're stuck here as well. We have the beautiful area, buy support, sell support, both sides. They had a big breakout that completely failed, so it is looking okay for buyers. But if I were going to jump in on this now, I would rather wait for some better prices down to 48.60 or lower to start scaling in more, looking to hang on to it for a long time. In the cryptocurrency side of things, sometimes a long time is only 5 minutes, but I'm talking, months or so going into next year. Because the way that this is all standing, we're just kind of chopping around. We're not really getting any favorable movement one side or the other. So I think we have to treat this like a range, even though it's not pinpointed as a range. I think buy low, sell high, stay out of the middle is going to be the way to approach this as well. And then our favorite, NEO. NEO is a very interesting market right now. We have a lot of stuff going on for NEO. The wedge has broken and they're trying to widen it out a little bit. We could even draw it like this. But the way that I'm seeing NEO right now is we had this previous major swing. Buyers faded that major swing, pretty obviously, right? Big failure off of the lows. And a lot of times when you get that failed breakout kind of move, and you end up going a little bit sideways, they'll reuse this area as a major area of support, and that's at 28.76. So what I'm looking for is we had the original swing low, they broke down, failed that breakout, popped back up. They've already held ahead of it. They never actually tested the level. I want to see a test of that support, maybe even a little bit lower, 28.76 down to even 28, and then look to buy into that move for continuation to the upside. NEO is another one that I do have a lot of long-term faith in, as long as China doesn't do anything else weird about ICOs and all that. For the most part, though, I think NEO has a very bright future. They're already starting to launch some of their ICOs on the NEO platform, and with the rally that we saw on Ethereum when ICOs started becoming popular, people have to buy NEO to fund those ICOs. So the more and more ICOs that come out on the NEO network, the higher and higher and the more demand that's going to step up on the NEO platform as well. Obviously, I would love to buy a little bit lower down to 26s, 25s. I'm still looking for those areas. And then, of course, anywhere underneath that is also going to be a nice area of interest too. So NEO still on the plate. I would like to see a short-term pullback to 28.76 for a bounce back up. So that's going to do it for the outlook. It doesn't really matter what market you approach, whether you trade stocks, options, cryptos, futures, forex, you name it. If it moves, you can trade it. And if you're trading it, always make sure to make a plan, trade that plan, follow the rules, and you'll be A-okay. Until next time, we'll see you all then.